But there may be no questions at all. It happens. Or there be dozens of questions that happened as well. So depending on the audience.
Indeed.
Don't expect any questions from me.
Oh, God, Roberto, you can use this stuff for admin, you know.
Yeah, but I think I'll struggle just to understand what you say. Don't expect any questions.
Oh, okay. I'll try and talk a little bit slower this time then. Right, that screen's there. That one's there. That screen's over there. Myself plenty of water. How many people do you tend to get on these webinars, Roberto?
Anything between 50, 70,
wow,
even more, depending on the topic and on the date.
That's really good.
Yeah, I will tell you later. I can tell you how many people attended.
Sure, that'd be really, really useful to know. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. And
okay. You all ready, Martin?
I am. I'm just double checking.
Fantastic.
There's a lot of windows here.
Yeah.
No, I think we're good to go.
Oh, go there. Yeah, I must have got a few windows as well, but not too bad.
The dog is in the house, so she won't disturb us.
Oh, good idea. Always helps, doesn't it?
I just know that as soon as I start talking, there'll be somebody coming to the door, and she'll start getting crackers. So she is sulking inside.
Oh, we'll go.
Yeah. Right. Good.
Just out of curiosity, Paul,
Yes.
since you are developing mobile apps,
yes,
especially the excellent one from Engage,
Thank
have you tried VoltaMax to develop mobile apps, or you're simply ignoring it at the moment?
I'm kind of ignoring it at the moment. I think certainly FoCul as a company isn't really looking at it at the moment, although we have had some discussions with HCL. I think I definitely think it's got some areas of interest, but I think it's, I don't know. I think the technology is very mobile orientated, so I don't think it. This is VoltaMX rather than VoltaMX Go. I don't think it's terribly well suited to desktop applications at the moment, and I think that's.
No, I was referring only to mobile applications.
Oh, only to mobile. Yeah. I mean, it's got some nice features. Being able to synchronize the data between the client and the back end is really nice. I've not seen VoltaMX Go in the flesh yet. This is just VoltaMX. So it'll be interesting to see that. I think there's a webinar next Wednesday. I think
yes, but as far as I know, and not being a developer, you have to take my words with not one but many grain of salt. Yes. The only difference between VoltaMX and VoltaMX Go is that VoltaMX Go can read domino backends.
Indeed, yes, yeah.
And VoltaMX can't. That's the only difference as far as I know, but I haven't tried.
Yeah, I think that's certainly the case at the moment, but I think other things like the Volt script will come into play at some stage as well.
That's the next goal for sure.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see what happens with the two platforms, because I think it's going to be difficult having two, one that can talk to Domino, one that can't, that essentially do the same thing. So I'm not quite sure how their stance is how that's going to play out, unless their intention is to continue Vault MX for their existing customers that are using it, and then start pushing Vault MX Go purely as a Domino solution. I don't know yet.
Well, no one knows, Paul, not only you. I guess.
I don't think even HCL know.
Only HCL knows if they know, because maybe they have not made their mind yet, so it's still playing. Okay.
How are we doing? Thank you, everyone. Got a few minutes to go.
Yeah, in a couple of minutes we'll start.
Have fun.
Thank you, Jesse.
And just to double check, can you all see my slides?
Yep, got them, Jesse.
Your slide.
Yeah, I can.
Oh yes, sorry, my apologies. You know, I said I got the second screen. I have got the second screen, but I hid the window behind it. Never mind. I can see it now. Thank you very much. And I've got the audio turned off, so there shouldn't be any sound going around.
Excellent.
Thank you, Jesse. And Roberto.
And I'll kick it off in just a minute here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
All right, about to start. Hello, everyone. Welcome and good day to the OpenNTF webinar for July. This is Testing Matters. Don't let users test your code. I'm Jesse Gallagher, one of the board members. I'm joined by our two presenters, Paul Harrison and Martin Davies, as well as several of the other OpenNTF board members, Roberto and Serdar, and we'll be guiding you through this. So before we get to the meat of it, we'll go through our little front matter here. So our agenda is pretty straightforward. We have our little welcome bit, we have the presentation, and then at the end we will do Q&A. So if you're not familiar with the way that Q&A works here, we'll get to that in a little bit. Before we'd like to begin, as always, we'd like to thank the OpenNTF sponsors. We have HCL made a generous contribution to help that primarily funds these webinars and contests like hackathons and generally running the organization. We do things pretty lean, but it does, it's not free, and this lets us keep the lights on. And similarly, Prominic donates all the IT related services. That's not just hosting, they do all the work for us basically. So whenever we need Domino servers maintained, upgraded, created, they handle it for us, and they do a splendid job at that. So we'd like to thank both of them for sure, because we wouldn't be doing this otherwise. And as a general reminder, this is all of our community. Like we always, on the board, we want to make sure that it's clear that OpenNTF is the community. OpenNTF is not the board, and it's not just the people posting projects. It's the whole community. So we are all volunteers here. No effort is too small. Any amount of suggestions, bug tracking, documentation updates, code snippets. It's all very, very valuable. Because if you're creating something, that's something that wasn't there before. And if your idea is bigger than you can do on your own, we can connect you to a team to work on it. So, if you have a great idea, you can mention it in Discord, and if people like it and people want to work on it, you can build a team. We've had a couple team projects that go pretty well. But yeah, anything you can do, really just participating. Often it's using stuff. I know personally. Anybody using any of my projects and giving me feedback, very, very helpful. Because it's one thing when it's just the person writing it, and it's another thing when other people are making use of it. So even just using it and giving feedback, very helpful. And we're all in this community. We have a couple upcoming events on our slate. We have the Admin Repair Cafe for July coming up on the 27th. And so that's in Discord as well. So the event is listed in there, and you can participate in there. I believe we're going to take it cool in August for repair cafes because usually just a lot of people aren't around, and they will presumably return in September. But in the meantime, we have a couple things going on at CollabSphere, which is in the Chicago Botanical Garden. This is in person this year, as opposed to the last couple of years, taking place from August 29th to 31st. 29th is the workshop day. And we have an OpenNTF roundtable, I believe, on that Wednesday. We also, I think, are at speed sponsoring, so you can interact with a couple OpenNTF board members, and just generally we have a good presence there. A couple of us also have other presentations, not really OpenNTF specific. And then for our next webinar, the title is Some Sort of Developer Thing While the Europeans Are on Vacation. It will be by me. So this is for August, usually kind of a low-key thing where I just come up with a topic, and we're looking to do that again this year. So we'll have a date and all that stuff announced, at the very least by the 1st of the month. So if you're around and not on vacation and unreachable, you're welcome to join us. And so now, before we get to the actual meat of the presentation, a little bit about the Q&A. So the way we generally do Q&A is that we collect questions throughout the course of the presentation and then answer them at the end. In GoToWebinar, there is a questions section, so feel free to put your questions in there. And then at the end, as we have time, we will, the organizers will ask the presenters the questions, and they'll respond verbally. And then we will eventually post a summary of them on the OpenNTF site. And as a general reminder, if it's something about, like, for example, HCL's product plans or something otherwise unrelated, our presenters are not here to answer those questions. Feel free to chat about those things in the OpenNTF Discord. And the link is opentntf.org/Discord. So those questions we will just kind of skip right over if they come up. And without any further ado, I'll bring you to the presentation with Paul and Martin.
Thank you, Jesse. One second, I'll just get the right screen. Don't want to be seeing all this rubbish. Come on. Here we go. Apologies for that. Right. Let me go back. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Testing Matters. Don't let users test your code. Over the next 60 minutes, we'll give you a broad introduction to automated testing, and in particular, end-to-end testing, which is often known as user interface testing using the popular Cypress app. We'll also have some nice demos for you. So let's begin by introducing ourselves. My name is Paul Harrison. I'm a developer at FoCul, focusing on front-end development using Angular. Got over 20 years experience with HCL Domino notes, everything from administration and support to infrastructure, migrations and development. And this year I'm a proud HCL Ambassador for the 3rd time, so thank you. Today it's my pleasure to be co-presenting with my colleague Martin Davies.
Afternoon all, great to be here. My name's Martin Davies and I'm the delivery and technical lead at FoCul. Been working in the notes dominant industry for a long time now, far longer than I care to think. Done everything from admin, dev, infrastructure, consultancy. So as I said on the slide, a bit of a jack of all trades but master of none. Myself and Paul have been working on some testing with Cypress, which is been great, and we thought we'd like to come and share that with you. In my spare time, I'm a bell ringer at Ripon Cathedral in Yorkshire in England, and I'm a keen long distance runner. So I'll come back later with some demos, but in the meantime, over to Paul for the techie stuff.
Great, thank you very much, Martin. So testing is a huge topic. So for today, we've condensed it down to the following kind of subtopics, which we'll group into 3 sections just to mix it up a little bit. So we're going to start with a brief introduction to automated testing and go on to explain why we believe that end-to-end testing is a perfect place to start and why Cypress is the ideal tool to start with. Then we're going to dive deeper into Cypress and look how to install it, build some test scripts, and actually show you some great demos. Finally, we'll look at a couple of XPage hints and tips when using Cypress, as well as some best practices before finally wrapping up. So let's first look at some of the challenges we face when testing. So everyone tests their code, but to what extent do they test it? Do you just test what's changed, or do you test the entire application? Or perhaps take a more proactive risk-based approach where you test the bits most likely to break based on your experience. We'll continue. You may not even have a test script to follow. So what about these and other challenges we face with testing? Well, testing is expensive, not just the initial cost of creating test plans and their upkeep, but also the effort required to run them, perhaps due to lack of resources, be that people or hardware, or time even. Manual test plans can be inconsistent due to human errors. Testers will misread the required steps, or sometimes even incorrectly interpret the test results, which can be really bad. Testing environments can be complex to set up and manage. Again, they're usually at additional cost. So these are some of the reasons why companies don't do it. Commercial testing tools have been available in the past and still are available, but they're often limited in their capabilities and, more importantly, expensive to buy, particularly for smaller organizations. So how does automated testing help us? Well, it gives you and your customers increased confidence in your shipped products. Unlike manual tests, automated tests are consistent, highly repeatable and reusable, and being able to easily reuse them has the major benefit of making code refactoring simpler. They're self-documenting and log any results, so you can keep track of the testing results as you go on very accurately. They provide a means by which you can more frequently ship application updates because you can test them more quickly. And if you use release pipelines such as CI/CD, then you can optionally integrate into those. This all leads to a reduction in customer support tickets, hopefully due to fewer shipped bugs. And now, these days, there are several good free to use open source or low cost tools available. So there really isn't any excuse not to do this anymore. So let's start with some testing approaches. You'll often see this testing pyramid in testing documentation articles, or something very similar. It may be called a trophy or a diamond, but they're broadly similar in terms of concept. In this example, it shows 3 typical layers or approaches, with at the top some optional manual tests, which might include visual UI testing, or more typically on-device testing for mobile applications. And we're not going to cover those here today. Note also the red and green arrows. Green shows the increased confidence in an application, whilst red shows that this confidence is at the expense of the amount of time it takes to develop the test in the first place. So we're going to start at the bottom with unit tests. The unit tests allow for the testing of individual functions, etc., in an isolated way. Typically, these are minor individual functions or groups of functions, or perhaps even a complete self-contained library or package of functions. The key point here is they're all in the same library. Unit tests make sure that the developer is working properly and they're following the provided specification. And because these tests run at code level, they're language specific. So be it Java or JavaScript, and also soon, I believe, VaultScript. And they may be framework specific, but that really depends on the requirements. They could be, but most likely they're not. Moving into the middle, we have integration tests. So integration tests make sure that the code is working properly and that the libraries and packages work well together. So that's the key difference between unit tests and integration tests, is this integration. So an example of that might be a library that does data transformation and a library that does API calls. The data transformation library has to get its data from the APIs, so they have to work together and correctly. They can be more complex to write. In fact, they usually are more complex to write than basic unit codes, which are the isolated tests, as you'll need to write additional code to include or inject the various libraries that are under test. And this is usually quite different between frameworks. So Angular will manage its dependencies different from React, for example. Like unit tests, integration tests are language specific, but you'll almost certainly use a framework. Finally, at the top, we have end-to-end testing. So end-to-end testing, this is really as close as you can get to user testing as you can achieve in an automated way. End-to-end tests make sure that the app is working properly from the beginning to the end. So typically this might be navigation, visibility of elements at different screen resolutions, regular horizontal menu versus hamburger menus, size of images at different resolutions, etc. And particularly also user journeys or stories. So how a user would use the application. So an example there could be perhaps a list of cars. You're scrolling up and down the list to find the car you're interested in. You pick a car, you look at some photos, you look at the reviews, and then eventually, hopefully, you click to buy. Most notably, end-to-end tests are language and framework agnostic. They don't need a framework to run because they run in the browser. As a result, they're much easier to get started with, as you don't even need to access any source code to be able to write tests against them. It's probably worth mentioning that whilst end-to-end testing might sound a little like load testing, it isn't. It is not. We're not trying to actually stress an application, instead to ensure that it's actually all working as intended. There we go. Sorry, 2 slides. So there are many different testing methodologies that exist. Some of them overlap, but we're going to talk here about the most common 2, which are fairly basic 2, really. The first is code-driven development. This is often referred to as design-driven development. And this is really the traditional approach where you develop your tests after you've developed your code. It's much easier to start with, as you likely already have some code to test. And it is perhaps better suited to end-to-end testing where you already have something to test. So it's fairly straightforward, and you may well have come across those this kind of testing before. Test-driven development is quite different. In this case, we develop tests before we write any code. That is, we write the test based on the provided specifications. And this methodology is becoming increasingly popular. If that sounds a little odd, then let me give you an example. So before writing any code for a new feature, you had a test for it that fulfills the specification. So you have your specification, you write a test that meets that specification. When you run your tests, obviously this new test code will fail because the function isn't present. You then write your feature code such that it meets the functional specification, i.e. what it should do. And this initial code could actually be quite simple, or quick and dirty code, so it could be hard-coded, not following any great standards. But the important thing here is that that code needs to pass its test. You then run the tests again, and if they all pass, then you know you've got a successful piece of code. Now you've got this fully working and verified test, you're free to refactor the original code for readability, maintainability, etc., knowing the test will catch any issues caused as a result of the refactor. And that's really very, very powerful. So this can lead to more efficient code, a little like flowcharting prior to coding, and it can even highlight original design issues. It may be a little bit of an odd concept to grasp, as I say, but so it should perhaps be considered as a longer term testing goal. When developing new code or major updates, and perhaps better suited to unit or integration testing, but can also be used for end-to-end testing. Just take a drink. Let's take a moment to talk about a couple of other testing considerations, which people often forget until they actually start doing any testing. The first is test coverage. So this is what the percentage of your code that's being tested. Your goal shouldn't necessarily be for 100% test coverage of the entire application, but rather to ensure that you test a reasonable percentage of your code and you focus on those areas that are critical to the application. Generally, 60 to 80% is usually considered very good, and unit, integration, end-to-end testing, all those different types of testing could have different percentages. For end-to-end testing, remember to always include user flow. So these are the journeys or the stories that I mentioned earlier. The other area is consistent test data. You need sample data. It may be fixed or easily resettable back to a known state to allow you to rerun the same test and avoid stale or already processed data. If you don't have any suitable sample data, then you can mock the data or simply fake it if there's no data at all available. Some packages allow you to easily do that, and that's worth bearing in mind. However, what I should add is that before you start mocking or faking everything, consider what it is you're trying to test. If you're just doing basic or static testing, using copy of existing production data as sample data may be the best option, providing your customer is happy with you doing that, obviously. So I mentioned we were going to focus on end-to-end testing. So why do we want to focus on that? Well, it can be quick and easy to produce usable results. As I mentioned earlier, as well as allowing testing of user flows, the journeys or the stories, we can also test the user interface and DOM style, styling and layout, which is particularly useful for responsive applications. Because it's language and framework agnostic, you don't even need access to the source code and can therefore focus on writing tests without having to worry about how the code itself actually works. As a result, it doesn't actually necessarily require any development skills. It can be delegated out to more junior colleagues or a QA team if you've got them, or just someone with some spare time. Above all, it's a great place to start your testing journey. So why Cypress? So Cypress gives us an entire end-to-end testing suite with a single install. So on the left-hand side of this slide, you can see all of the components that Cypress brings as part of its installation. It's modern and built on the best-in-breed testing practices, packages that are still being used. You may see some in the diagram that you recognize if you previously looked at testing, such as Mocha, Jasmine, or Selenium. It also comes complete with additional helper packages built in, such as Lodash or jQuery, which you can use within your tests. So the tests themselves run in the browser you actually have installed on your machine, and you get to choose those. And I think we'll see that as part of the demo. The tests are written in JavaScript, TypeScript, so fairly easy to modify if you're familiar with modern JavaScript. It also means, because they're running in the browser, you can use existing dev tools to examine and debug the application under test, which is very helpful at times. Cypress is very well documented with lots of good examples, and it is free to use. It's open source and under active development. It supports live reload, so that you can run it at the same time as you're developing code. You can make a code change, save that, the test will rerun, and you can validate your code in real time. And it can run in a foreground mode with the displays showing, or in a headless mode, which is what you would tend to use for a release pipeline. It has responsiveness capability built in using preset or custom viewport sizes, and it's Docker compatible. One of my favorite features with Cypress is called time travel. What time travel does is it snapshots the DOM during the test execution, and those snapshots can be later reviewed by stepping backwards and forwards through the DOM to see the changes that are made before, during, and actually after the test step. And I think that's quite unique to Cypress. I've not seen any other package doing that. It also automatically waits for commands and assertions to successfully complete before moving on to the next stage. And that can aid test writing. It's extensible. You can add custom functions, and there are third-party custom plugins available, and you can write those yourselves. You can take screenshots as it's running, either programmatically or even on failure. So the latter would be useful in a headless mode. And you can also take a video of the test. So it will record a video of the entire test suite execution. However, that is headless mode only, and that's where you would be interested in that for the pipeline deployment. And finally, it's got good cross-browser support. So it supports Chrome, Edge, and Electron, Firefox, and Safari. Although the Safari support is still experimental, but it does work. I'll also add, although we're not going to talk about it any further, but I'll also add as a bonus feature, Cypress also includes something called component testing, which is a browser-based testing of individual UI components. So it's similar to unit testing, but in a browser. But it is framework specific, but it's worth mentioning as that's definitely a bonus of using Cypress. Cypress also has a paid-for option, which is called Cypress Cloud. It was formerly called Cypress Dashboard, and this may be worth looking at for some companies, particularly if you're using release pipelines, as it gives you lots of extra ability, such as being able to look back through historical trends and do parallelization, load balancing of your tests. So I think we've come to demo time.
Right. Just
now we need to just work out how to transfer you across.
Just bear with me whilst we do this. I think if we do this. Right. I'm going to need Paul or Roberta just to confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, if I can see the Cypress Cloud screen. So if you want to go to the next one.
Sure. Kiddo. Right. Let's make sure everything sorted out over on these other screens, so you can see what's going on. Right. Okay. Afternoon, everybody, again. So let me just go onto this next slide, which is where Paul kindly hand over. So my job today is to give you a little bit of an overview of Cypress. The intention of this is not to kind of overload you with too much information. It's to give you enough to go away and give it a go. And if I can get that across today, then that's a job well done. It's a straightforward platform to use. It's not too tricky. And I want to talk you through, or we'll talk through installation, some of the scripting, the testing UI. We'll go through those two things fairly quickly, and then we'll go on to demos. And I've got 4 or 5 demos to show you. First one's a very straightforward, just looking at a simple control and running a couple of tests against that, just to show you the scripting and the testing environment in practice. And the other tests are looking at a Domino discussion database, XPages design, just the standard template, and just looking at recording and looking at a few tests run over that as well, which just brings it back into the HCL collaboration solutions arena a little bit, but also shows you how easy it is to generate these tests. So it's the curse of the presenter. These are live tests, so fingers crossed these things do go well. And Paul very kindly mentioned earlier that testing is delegated to the more junior colleagues. So junior colleague here reporting in for duty. Let's see what we can do.
Thank you, Martin.
So if we let's have a look at the Cypress installation and configuration. So it's a node package installed via npm, normally installed into a project as a dev dependency. It can be installed as a dev dependency into a kind of a fully fledged node project, or it can be just installed in its own right into pretty much an empty folder, and that folder becomes your test suite. And that's how the demos we're going to run today have been done. I've simply created an empty folder on my operating system, navigated into that, ran the npm install Cypress command, and that's just dropped into the Cypress packages into that particular folder. So it's what we find is it's quite slow to. I say it's slow to install. It's actually got a lot better on the more recent releases, but it does take a little while to install. And the first time run, whilst it configures itself and installs the completes the installation, can take a little while. But once it's up and running, it's very quick and dynamic to use. So it's run using the npx Cypress open control commands I've got there at the bottom of the screen, and we'll come back and look at the headless mode, which Paul mentioned before. Also run for the npx Cypress run with a few arguments on there, just to show you how that works. So, as I say, we'll go through these initial slides and look at the real stuff in a second. So when you install Cypress into your project, it creates a number of key directories and a number of key files, which is just good to kind of know that up front, because it just helps you navigate around the thing and know where things are being written to and what have you. So I've pointed out here a number of the key folders and files that it does produce. Key ones to focus on is when you install Cypress into your project folder, it will drop a cypress.config.js file into the top level folder. That's really useful if you want to switch on some of the more advanced Cypress features, and that is something which we'll come to later on. We have a number of folders which are installed by default. The most important ones of those, and the ones which you'll see in action today, are the E3, the end-to-end testing folder, and this is where our scripts are written and stored. We can subdirectory that if you want to give our scripts a little bit of structure. That's fine. Cypress will install a lot of samples if you want it to, so that's also where the sample tests arrive. The support folder is particularly important, particularly around this command.js file. So you can write your own kind of custom code, your kind of custom chunks of script, repeatable things which you want to run in your tests, and they can be stored in the command.js file. It's like a global kind of storage, if you like. So you can write some functions in there, and then you can deploy it out to your scripts time and time again, and we'll take a look at that. And also, as your tests run, Paul mentioned before that you can record screenshots and videos, and particularly that's useful when running the headless mode, and we'll look at that a little bit later on and see files dropping into there.
Martin?
Really? Yep.
I seem to have dropped your presentation, your screen.
Have you now? That's annoying. Let's go back to it. Show screen. My show screen option is grayed out, which must mean I'm no longer presenter. It's come back now. Hang on a sec. Right, is that back now, Paul?
Yes.
Sure. Okay. How long ago did that drop out?
Literally just a second ago.
Okay. Right. So
you just talked about you're just talking about the videos and the screenshots.
Okay. Sure. Okay. So you didn't miss too much of that. Okay. Just ping me if that happens again.
Sure.
Right. Okay. There you go. So yeah, we're talking about the output folders, the downloads, the screenshots, and the videos, and we'll see those come into play when we run the headless mode. Right. Okay. So let's just talk about a simple test and what it looks like. So Paul mentioned before that tests are written in JavaScript or TypeScript. So we have tests go into a test.cy.js file. Inside our file, we can define a test suite. So that is kind of like a high-level heading, and then under each test suite, we can define a number of different tests. So we can, in effect, daisy chain tests together one after the other. And Paul also mentioned before that we're looking for tests or commands and assertions to complete before we run into the next line of the code. So it does run to this JS file very much from top to bottom. We can as I say, have as many tests as we want to within reason. And within each test, we have commands which telling Cypress what to do. So get a web page, get a control, get a text box, these kind of things. And all of our Cypress commands are prefixed by a cy dot. So we have a cy.get, for example, cy.open. And these commands are then validated by assertions. So once you've got a web page, we assert whether it opens or not. If we got a button, an assertion could be, has it got the right text on the button, the right label, or has it got the right style applied? So in effect, it kind of works with these, and in effect, it's looking for kind of a true or false response, if you like. And if you get a false response, then the test will fail, and we can see at which point the test has failed and get some information back from the user interface as to why it's happened. It's a very basic structure, and if you're familiar with writing JavaScript code, then it's not too daunting. So there's just a bit more of an example with that side kind of padded out with some real code. So in there I have a test suite, and I've got a test one in there, which is going to a particular website, getting an object on that website, and it's checking the length of the object to see if it's got a length of 2. So that's the kind of structure, and you can see there very clearly the cy commands, the cy visit, and cy get. Okay, so the test definitions of Paul mentioned in one of his slides that if you were kind of running a previous test environment, you might have to install various components to build your environment, and one of the environments is Mocha. So the test language, the definition of the tests is very much borrowed from Mocha. So if you're familiar with that, that's great. You can get up and get running with this stuff fairly quickly. If you're not, then there's plenty of help out there, and we've got some links towards the end of this presentation with some of the links out to Cypress, where these commands are well defined and documented. So just a couple of things I wanted to mention in here is it's very, these test pans can become quite big quite quickly. You can imagine if you're testing an application, there's lots of tests you want to run one after the other, and it's useful to be able to go and switch tests off and say, well, I only want to run one particular test in my test script, or I want to run all the tests apart from a few. So these .skip or .only commands, which are applied to the test suite itself or to the actual individual tests, are really useful to kind of tune your test script and run it in particular modes or particular contexts. Okay, so just to factor in, just reiterate some of the stuff that I mentioned before. The commands begin with CY. And I mentioned assertions before, so that's the validating if a test has passed or failed. So many of the commands have kind of a built-in assertion. So if you are visiting a web page or you're getting an element, it's very much kind of a true or false as to whether that command is successful. So you don't need to kind of formally specify an assertion on those particular commands, but you can in Cypress kind of extend the chain of assertions that you're looking to test against. So, for example, you can get an element and then you can test if it should include a particular label, or so should have a particular label, or should include some particular text, or does it have some text and have a particular style defined. So we have these should and these and commands, which you'll see me use a little bit later on, which allows you to extend the kind of the complexity of the test which you're carrying out on a particular assertion, so on a particular command. We also have explicit assertions which you can define using the expect and assert. These are very much pulled out of the Mocha model. We tend not to use them so much in end-to-end testing, but we have used them before in unit tests. But these things are very, very specific, and you can't chain these things together. So the implicit assertions are much more valuable and much more functional in the context of Cypress. Right, so let's actually have a look at the test runner UI. So we're going to run some simple tests. We'll have a look at this time travel thing which Paul mentioned before. We're going to have a look at Cypress Studio. This is an experimental tool which has been experimental, I think, since version 6, I think, and we're up at version 12 now. So it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon, but it's really good for recording your own scripts, and I'll do a demo of that. And we'll also run into headless mode as well, and just show how that works. So you'll need to bear with me a second because there's a lot of screens here to show you. So we'll start off with the actual testing environment itself. So I'm going to drag this over. Paul, has that come across okay?
Yes, that's absolutely fine.
Okay, right. So this is Cypress. When you okay, bring this one across here as well. So if you open your project up and you've installed Cypress and you do your npx Cypress open, this is what fires up first time around. So you can see here, this isn't the first time in. First time that I've been in. This is configured for end-to-end testing. This version, but if you want to go to component testing, which Paul mentioned earlier, you can do that. So we're going to go for the end-to-end testing, and we're going to say, well, which browser are we going to test? Against? So these are the built-in options, which come with the application. So we are going to go with Chrome. At this point, it just takes over my Chrome browser, and we have Cypress running kind of within the context of the Chrome browser. And what it's done here is it's gone into the E2E, the end-to-end testing folder of the project that I've opened Cypress up within. You can see here it's picked up on a few tests, which is great. That's what I was expecting. And we'll have a look at these ones in a second. We've got some settings down here as well, which we can use to go and change, which we'll come back to later. And you can also switch out to different browsers to run your tests at this particular point as well, if you want to. And the login option allows you to log into Cypress Cloud, which allows you to kind of store your tests up in the cloud, run against multiple machines. And this is the functionality which Paul mentioned at the end of his session earlier, which is comes with a subscription. Right. So the test we're going to run first of all. I'm just going to drag across this browser window for a second, because this is the first thing I'm going to test. This is a very simple example application provided by Cypress. It's just a little React app. We've got we've got a list item on here, and you can choose items on here. If you want to, you can delete them. You can mark them as active. You can also add options to that list as well. So it's going to run a couple of tests against this. Really simple test. Let's just check it's got 2 items on the list first of all. That'd be a good one to do. And then we'll run another test just to go and add something onto the list and make sure that's actually arrived as expected. So I have this test here, this demo 1 test here. Before I run it, I'm just going to go and show you what it looks like. And because these are JS files, got them open up in Visual Studio Code. So this is a very simple test. It's my demo test. That's the test suite and the test within inside of it. I'm going to go to that particular URL. That's an implied assertion, an implicit assertion. I'm going to my list object item. Now you see here that I'm actually going to test it to see if it's got 3 items on the list. This is intentional. It's really quite important when you're doing or writing test scripts that you actually start and write a failing test as your first test. If you write a test which you know is going to fail, you get a lot more information back from a failed test than you do against a test which has passed. And of course, if you've written a test incorrectly, it could pass because you've missed some stuff out or you've got some syntax wrong or whatever. So it's really important that you start with a test that you know is going to fail. That can confirm you're connecting to the right website, you're testing the right objects, your criteria are working as you expect. So this test will fail. So I'm just going to go into my test over here, and I'm going to run it. Okay, my test is loading. You can see the test will run here in the center pane here. It's taking a little while. Come on. Okay, and you can see the test running over here, and this is going to fail as I expected. And we can see here is, yes, it's failed because this list item is testing for length of 3, but it's actually got 2 items on the list there. And you can see here as well, if I just mouse over the various parts of this left-hand pane, that the window of the website in the middle there changes. So you get to see what it's trying to do as it runs that particular test. So if I wanted just to go and make that into a test which passes, I'll just change that to 2. I want to make sure I've got 2 items on the list rather than the 3. I'll just go and save that. And as soon as I save it, the test goes and reruns. You can see now everything is green. The test is successful. And again, just walking my way through, you can see what it's checking that list item has got pay electric bill, and that list item has got walk the dog. So a very simple test, just testing over a simple list. So let's just extend that a little bit and drop in a little bit more testing capability onto that. In this example here, having done my test and checked that the length is 2, and I've got pay electric bill and walk the dog on that particular control, just going to go through a little bit further, and we're going to add an item to the list. So in this particular case, we're going to add feed the cat to the list. Once you've added feed the cat, we're going to check the list is now 3 elements in length, and then we're going to just see if we can check up some of these items and check that and use the testing software to make sure that an item has been checked and completed correctly. So this is an interesting one because this is where we have in effect 2 test suites. We have one here defined here by this describe, and a second one down here. Each test suite contains its own set of tests defined by the it actions or the it commands. A couple there and some here. Okay, so this is just going to run on one after the other. And also in here, we've also got some hooks in here as well. So we've got some before each hook, before each, after hooks. These are useful for places where you can again store repeatable codes. So for example, before I run each of these tests, I want to log on to this Cypress to-do list. So this before each test logs on, and the test just contains the specifics of what I want to do. And you'll see the feedback of these tests just coming out on the test script as I run it using this cy.log command. So let's go back to the UI. We'll need to just go and find that spec. It's this demo 2 one. So I'll just choose it, off it goes. Okay, now that ran very fast. We'll just run it again. You can just keep an eye on it. Okay, all the way through. So it's gone and checked that it's gone and added paid electric bill onto the list, and it's gone and checked that I've got 3 items there left on the list. And if I just again just walking through my script here, you can see what it's doing at each particular part of the test. Again, that's just really helpful when you have a script which fails and you're not sure where it's failed, why it's failed. You can get to the point of failure quite quickly. Then you can also step back through the UI, and it gives you a real help as to what's gone on. We also mentioned these hooks in the code, the before all, before each, and you can see these are reporting through into my output as well. Okay, and that's reporting through from the cy.log command. So again, you can just pad out your code with some feedback there. Right, so hopefully you're all with me still. So that's a second test. So let's just move on now and look at a slightly more meaningful test in the Domino world. So what I'm just going to show you first of all is what we're going to try and test, and then we'll come through and have a go at it. So let's just drop onto my other browser. I need to bring over. Right, so just need to paste in a URL here. So this is just a URL to really simple discussion database. Okay, so that's all it is. It's a completely out of the box domino discussion database. And really all I want to test here is I want to test a few things. I'd like to test if I can add a new record, a new top-level document to this, and it'd also just be nice just to check that that button there says new topic. Okay, so that's what I'm going to try and do with this, and I'm going to try and do it using the Cypress Recorder tool, which allows me to kind of use the UI to define a test rather than writing code. So this is great. It means you can use the UI to get the scaffolding of your test in place if you like, and then you can go in and fine tune the code later if you want to be a little bit more specific or focus on what you're testing. So to get this thing switched on, under settings, we have it's project settings, I think. Yes, project settings. And then under project settings, we have a few things you can play around with, but they have these experimental features, which all come switched off, unfortunately, when you get the product. It's a studio feature that we're going to use to do this recording. So you need to switch that on. And that is switched on by just adding a couple of lines of code into the Cypress config file. So just to really quickly show you this, this is specified in the presentation. So that's what I was looking for my Visual Studio. So there is a Cypress.config file, which I say sits at the root of your folder structure, and you need to switch on the Experimental Studio in that file to actually get access to this. I'll come back to Visual Studio Code in a second. So how do you actually use this thing? So I'm going to create a new spec file. I'm going to create an empty spec file, and I'm going to call it let's call it record.cy.js. We're going to create that. Okay, it does go and drop a little bit of code into the file. I'm not going to run that yet. We'll just get rid, and then you can see my file there is held here. And I'll open the file, and it does run this. It does run this bit of code is dropped in. We'll just leave that there for now. We'll take that out in a second. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and record some stuff on this discussion database. So the way it works is, having got to the template.spec file, turning on the studio feature gives me this little feature here to add new test. And if I do that, I'm now in record mode. So it's asking me where I want to go, and you can see down here I've got some a little save button pop up, so I can record. I can save my test when I finish. So first things first, I'm going to tell it I want to go to that URL. So we'll go there. We'll do continue. That's got me there. I need to sign in, so and my password. Okay, I'm going to sign in. I'm in my application here. I'm going to want to check that my new topic button says new topic. So the way I do that is I right click on new topic. It says, okay, well, what do I want to check? So those are the attributes and or the properties and attributes it's picked up on that particular button. I can say, well, I want to check it has the text new topic. So that's written that into my test. I'm going to click my new topic. We'll add OpenNTF. There's one there. record one. We'll just stick some tags in there. NTF testing matters. We'll go and save that. That's creating my record in there. You can see that that's gone in there, and I'm going to go and save my test script. This test name, I was going to say add as top level document. Okay, so let's just go with that. Okay, and you can see because I've gone and saved it, it's going to run it again. Off we go. It's creating me another record in there. Let's just have a little look at that script that it's gone and created. That's now over here. So this is what it's gone and done. So this is all just been done through the point and click interface. It's written my code for me. So I've gone to that particular website. I've logged in. Yes, it's bad news. It's got the username and password in there. We'll come to that in a second. I've clicked my login box. You can see here that I've gone and checked my new topic button. That's great. I've gone and clicked it, and it's then gone and created me my document there. So a really simple test, recorded really quickly. But I think you can see if you just take that way of working, if you have a website or a web page that you're working on, it's very easy to point your way through. Right-click, pick up on the attributes and properties of a particular part of the page, and then record a test which validates that part of the page is working correctly. Right, now there are some things you can do in here whilst we're here. So whilst Paul did say earlier on this isn't great for load testing, and that's absolutely true, it is quite good in that you can kind of run a test multiple times if you want to kind of get some idea of how the website handles throughput. So it's quite possible for me just to drop a loop in here, which we'll do. So I go through and create maybe 4 or 5 documents. I'm putting that in the wrong place. I need to put it after I've tested the button. So I'm just going to drop a bit of code in here. So let's drop that in. So that should put my document generation code into a loop. That's nice. Okay, and just to make it obvious what I'm doing, we'll just put another bit of code in there, which will just put my I'll just put the name of the document onto a variable, something which is defined with a variable, just so it spools through. So we'll just put that into there. Okay, so what this is going to do is we'll run this test again in a second. This time it's going to loop through 5 times. It's going to create 5 test documents with subject 1 to 5, and we should see those drop into the test and into the user interface. So we'll put that over here. I'll just go and save that test. As I save, it will run. Here we go. Okay, logging on. 1, 2. Three, 4, 5. Okay, 4. Sorry, 4. I thought it was 5. Just the 4 there. So, not load testing, but kind of rapid throughput testing. How fast can your website respond to the test that you're passing into it? Okay, so let's just go back. Let's just go back to this. So one problem with this is displaying username and password. Not ideal, but this is also kind of a chunk of code, if you like, which you'd want to use over and over again. If you're logging on, if you're running tests, logging on with various test accounts, you want to have that test account stored away and then used again and again. So this is done through this can be done through a command.js file. So all I've done in this command.js file is you can write a custom Cypress command. I've called this one demo login, and you can see here all I've done is I've just put in the code which is used for that particular login box, including the click for clicking on the open button. So this allows me to go back to my file here, and I can take this little lot out of there, and I can just replace that with that demo login. So if I just replace that command, that code, with that function that is defined in the Cypress.command. So global functions, you can drop into this command file and write once and then use again and again and again. So if I go back to my record file, and I'm now going to save that, okay, again the test will go and run. Okay, and now that login is being run, is being triggered from the demo login function rather than username and password, which was stored when I recorded the code originally. Okay, and again, it's just run through 4 times and done that test for me. So I hope that makes sense. So the last thing I want to show you is to look at the headless way of working, the headless mode. So to do that, I'm just going to go back to my original test that we recorded, that we worked on, which was the failing test, and I just want to make sure it is actually failing. So just bear with me a second. Just need to make sure that the code is correct for that. So it was the demo 1 failing test. I think as we left it, yeah, it was passing. So I just want to go back and make it into a failing test. The reason why I'm doing this is, it is in failed. The reason why I'm doing this is purely because when you run in headless mode, you only get screenshots created if the test has failed. The screenshot is created at the failure point. So I just wanted to make sure we have a failing test so I can show you that. So let's move across and show you how we run a failing test. So I mentioned at the very start on the very first slide that we run npx Cypress open to open up a Cypress session, and there's an npx Cypress open with a headless mode switch to allow us to go and run it in headless mode. So that's all we're going to be doing here. I'm going to bring up a command prompt. Let's just get rid of that Visual Studio window so it's not confusing. So onto a command prompt and into here, we'll do it twice. We'll do it once for this failing test, and we'll do it once for the test against the discussion database. Right. So this is the failing test one. So it's npx Cypress run, running in Chrome browser, and we then just specify the path to the spec file that we want to work on. And just to prove we're not smoke and mirroring here, this is the project folder on my machine, and we've got nothing in screenshots, and we've got nothing in videos at the moment. So we'll come back to that. We'll run this. This will be a failing test. Off it goes. Okay, as expected, it's failed. We have one test in the spec file. We've had one failure. We get some stats up here about how long the thing took to run. So if I just go and look in those 2 folders now, you can now see I've got a video, and the video is of the test that just ran. So very much a recording of the of what we'd have had on the UI. Test be loaded. Yeah, I think that's it. And then if I go and look into the screenshots, okay, that's a screenshot of the point at which the test failed. So again, I get the information back on there. Right, just out of interest, we'll just go and run it back on the one that I recorded, which I think I called it record.cy.js. So this is the discussion database, adding 4 documents, reading the password out of the config, so reading username and password out the config. So we'll just go and run that. Again, off it goes. It's found one spec file. Okay, as expected, it passed. We'll probably get a little bit more data out about it in a second. Okay, so that test took 17 seconds to run. It ran 2 tests in that file. That's the one for adding the records and the one for testing the text on the text on the new topic button. In this particular case, we won't have any screenshots because the test didn't fail. And I've closed down my window onto my test project. So if we go into videos here, this video I think should be the test I just ran. There you go. Yeah, in there running my four editions of a main document into the discussion database. Okay, so that kind of brings to an end all of my demos. So I've been going about 35 minutes on that. So apologies if that's been too long, but hopefully that's given you some of the flavour for what Cypress do. And most importantly, for me, it's actually really easy to actually go and get this thing set up and working and easy to play around with. So just running through the rest of my slides in this particular section, taking you through the test route, the various parts of Cypress, including the headless mode. There's a slide there which tells you a little bit more about how to interpret the errors when they come back. A little bit there about Cypress Studio and the line to add to cypress.config to get it working. And a few words about the command.js and using that to create custom commands. Also a slide about the headless test. So this is the point where I give it back to Paul, and hope you've enjoyed seeing that.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Martin, that was fantastic. Let me see if I can wrestle with my screen sharing again. So which screen are we sharing now? Screen. Ah, that's how you do it. Ah, okay. Okay. Excellent. So we're back. Thank you, Martin. That was a great demo. Thank you very much. So as you've seen, XPages plays quite nicely with Cypress, as do any of the other frameworks. So pretty much anything that will run in a browser, you can test with Cypress. But we have seen a couple of things with XPages, a couple of issues that we've encountered. So we thought we'd share 3 of the more important ones, just to spare you the pain. So the first one is clicking. So here we've got an example of a click event, but occasionally these fail. No real rhyme or reason to them. They just do fail. So there are a couple of alternatives we can use on those occasions. The first is to use a .trigger click, and that usually fixes the issue. But if it doesn't, the third and final option, we've never needed a fourth option, is trigger mouse over click. As I say, there's no rhyme or reason why these fail, but occasionally do. But they are consistent. They are consistent failures. So they're not flaky tests or anything like that. The second tip is about selectors. So the way XPages creates selector names, selecting those elements can be a little bit problematical. So here we've got a selector here with the colons, and it's all perfectly valid, it all still works. But what we found is you need escape those colons. Otherwise, Cypress won't find them. And what you'll see is Cypress Studio actually does correctly escape these. One thing we didn't show in the demo was the selector playground, which when you're looking at a page, you can actually hover over an element and it will give you the selector for the element. That also doesn't generate the 2 slashes. In fact, that puts 1 slash in, which is equally useless. So that's important to remember with XPages. And just to give you just to sort of run through that in a bit more detail, we've got this edit button here. The ID is this with the colons. So we use this as our get, but it fails because it can never find it. If we use the Cypress playground, which unfortunately we didn't quite show you, but it was at the top of the screen in what looked like a browser navigator bar. You can hover over an element, in that case, that one. You can then copy that to create your cy.get. Note that it's still got the single escapes. Again, that fails, even more useless. However, as soon as you manually edit them or use Cypress Studio to get these elements, it adds the double slashes in. So watch out for that one. That took us a long time to track that one down. Finally, we've got the data CY tag. So because selectors in XPages are automatically generated, occasionally they can unexpectedly change, or at least I've seen them change, which will result in a failed test. So this potential issue can be mitigated by adding a dedicated and unique data CY tag. And data CY tag is unique to Cypress. Other end-to-end tools may use a different name for it. And these are effectively just aliases, if you like, in your markup, which allows you to directly access or directly target that selector. It also means you no longer have to worry about the double escape selectors, as we talked about. And if you do use them, it's best to kind of standardize or agree on a naming convention, such as page name function, name element, or some such to keep things tidy. And you can see that here. So we've got our double escaped click event, or we use the much tidier data CY equals this. And we'll have a look at an example of that in a second. One thing also to be aware of with XPages is be careful of using these CY data or data CY tags inside of an XPages repeat, else you'll get multiple tags with exactly the same name, and that doesn't end well. So let's just work our way through this. So again, we've got our edit button, and this is our ID, and this is what we would use to get that click, and this would work because we've double escaped it. We can very easily add a data CY tag attribute in using Domino Designer, either using the design tab here, where we add an attribute called data CY and the value, or in the code tab over here, where we add this section. And the end result now, if we look in DevTools at this very same button, it's added the data CY tag in there, which means we can now use the tag to get the element. So that's really quite useful. So we talked quite a bit about XPages and how it all works. There's also some general best practices you should follow. So as you saw in the demo, Martin's password and user credentials were in there. Not great. So take care to not inadvertently leave authentication credentials or other personal data in test scripts or related files, particularly when you're using source control. So exclude them from being, or you could put those credentials in another file and reference that other file and exclude that other file. When you're creating a new test, always try to start with an initial failing test, as Martin said earlier. And that applies even if you're writing tests after coding. They'll be much more reliable, and in effect, the tests test the code, and the code tests the test, and that will make sense one day. And begin with simple generic type tests, so basic page navigation, etc., to build experience. Then progressively add new, more complex tests as your test script skills develop. So for new features, bug fixes, etc. As you saw earlier, talking about XPages, try and use the dedicated element select tag. So in Cypress's case, data CY as an alias, it will make your code much more robust. And be mindful when adding date-specific functions that might result in flaky tests. So a flaky test is a test that might work one day but might not work another day. So an example of that could be a test that is date-specific, and maybe you've got a button on the screen or an area on the screen that displays different information depending on whether it's before, on, or after a specific date. So you need to test all of those different examples. And as a developer or someone tasked with writing tests, only write tests for the code that you're responsible for, and don't write tests for the code, or more importantly, libraries that you're not responsible for. That's their author's responsibilities. It's very important that, and then everyone writes their own tests, and the world is a happy place. Finally, try to be smart when writing tests and avoid repetition within them by making use of the before and after functions that Martin showed you that are available in most of the products actually, such as Cypress. We're almost finished now, but just before we do, it would be remiss of us not to mention a couple of areas in which Cypress could be considered a little weak. So the first one is multi-tab support in browsers. So perhaps you've got an application in a browser tab, you click on something, a button on that application, it opens another tab and continues with whatever it's doing in that other tab. Unfortunately, with Cypress, you can't follow those tabs, so you're stuck on your tab that you're working on. That can cause a problem for some applications. The other main area is iframes, or the only other real area is iframes. And that's selecting or accessing elements within it. The iframes one was flagged as planned on the Cypress roadmap, but that seems to have disappeared. So I'm not quite sure what happened to that. There are workarounds for most of those, for those two on the web. But if these are an issue for you, then there are a couple of alternative end-to-end packages that you might want to consider. The first is Nightwatch. I do apologize. And the second is called Playwright. And whilst you can use Cypress for locally testing hybrid mobile applications, so that's locally testing, if you want to test native applications, you'll need to look at different test suites such as WebDriver IO and Appium. But hopefully Cypress will work for you. So over the past 60 minutes or so, we've talked about how automated testing can be beneficial to shipping quality applications with low failure rates. We've looked at general testing types and terminologies to give you a general awareness of automated testing. There's a lot more out there to discover. And we've hopefully shown how end-to-end testing is a great place to start with automated testing, and hopefully demonstrated how relatively easy it is to begin implementing those kind of tests using Cypress. I think we've shown that I hope we've shown that despite its initial steep learning curve, it can be beneficial to all types and sizes of companies, not just from a technical perspective, but from a business perspective too. And as we said right at the very beginning, testing is a huge topic. We've only really touched the tip of the iceberg. So finally, we hope that this session has sparked your interest in automated testing and shown that you no longer need to let users test your code. Thank you very much. So thank you very much for joining us today. We do hope you've enjoyed this session. Also, particular thanks to OpenNTF and the team for making it happen. And we're open for questions. Our contact details are the first couple of slides, and there's some references after this slide, and we'll make the slide pack available. So thank you very much, everyone.
And thank you. That was very, very good. Let me make my show this window. So we don't currently have any questions in the queue. If anybody has any, you can add them into the GoToWebinar questions pane. We'll add them in. So we'll give people a little bit of time to do that. In the meantime, I have to say, I mean, I haven't personally used Cypress, but I'm intrigued now because I've gotten into mode of if I don't have at least some basic tests, but ideally some integration or UE tests, I start feeling feeling wonky about the project. And so like once you get into that mode, it really changes your outlook, because once you have a test for something, you're not going to have that bug again. So I think it's really critical, even like you said, even though it can be complicated to get into, especially since Domino is always kind of resistant to it.
Yeah, I think Cypress makes it really easy to get into doing this testing. I mean, as Martin showed, it's just a single node install, and literally you're up and running. The examples they've got are really good, and it didn't take very long for us to start putting some tests together. But it does very quickly. You start from a nice simple test, and then you start drifting on to, okay, what shall I test now? What can I test, and how can I test this? So it can grow quite quickly, but that's all experience. It's all progressive learning with it. Do we have any questions?
No.
Like to add?
Just a note, Paul, if you can send either me or Jesse the slides,
Certainly.
then we will upload it together with the webinar recording on our website.
Sure.
You can choose between listen again to the whole webinar or just download the slide.
Okay, that's absolutely fine.
Fine.
Martin?
Yep.
You got anything to add?
Not really, no. I mean, just say that I came to it as a complete testing novice with Domino kind of through and through background, and it's been really quite easy to write some relatively complicated tests relatively quickly. And for me, the recorder was the kind of the light bulb moments that something took a lot of the complexity out and allowed you to kind of build kind of frameworks of your testing really quickly, and then you can go into the code level and start to kind of fine tune it if you needed to. But the recorder was a real game changer for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. Being able to kind of click around and navigate through a website, and then scaffold your tests, and then you dive deeper into those particular pages. It really is very easy to get tests up and running initially.
Yeah. As Paul said, you don't need to know anything about who's about the application design or who's written it or the code. It's just purely on the user interface level, which is and you get a nice big JS file, which you then just run again and run again and run again, which is fantastic. Completely repeatable.
Super.
Yeah, we did have one question come in, but I think coincidentally you just addressed it, which was about recording user session as opposed to coding it. And that was definitely a really cool one where you record what you're doing, and then that becomes your test suite that you can then tweak or just leave as is.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Well, we're happy to hang around if there are any more questions. If not, entirely up to you. Certainly, if anyone does think of any other questions, please contact us, and we'd be more than happy to get back to you.
Yeah, so I think that we can wrap it up there. So thank you very much for your time. As Roberto intimated, we will have the slides and the video up for this later up on the OpenNTF site. So once again, thank you to our presenters and to all the attendees, and I hope that everybody has a nice rest of your day.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Goodbye, everyone.
Cheers. Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.